That night on The Tonight Show, a letter was read. Tim Allen made it halfway through, started crying, walked off stage, and Jimmy Fallon couldn't find words for 15 full seconds. The Tonight Show. Studio 6B at Rockefeller Center. Wednesday night. Full audience. The cameras rolling. Everything normal. Everything routine. Tim Allen was the guest, promoting his latest project, trading jokes with Jimmy, the kind of easy conversation that made late-night television work. They'd been talking for maybe 6 minutes. Light stuff. Stories about home improvement. Laughs about getting older. The audience was eating it up. Questlove and the Roots were ready with bumper music. Everything was going exactly as planned. Then Tim reached into his jacket pocket. "Jimmy," he said, his tone shifting. "Before we go any further, there's something I need to do. Something I promised I would do if I ever got the chance." Jimmy's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't in the pre-interview. This wasn't on the cards. But he was a professional. He leaned forward, curious. "Okay, what's going on?" Tim pulled out an envelope. White. Slightly worn at the edges. The kind of envelope that had been carried around for a while, opened and refolded many times. "I got this letter 3 weeks ago," Tim said. "From a man named Robert Chen. He's 78 years old. Lives in Michigan. And he asked me if I would read this on television. On your show, specifically." The audience was quiet now. The easy comedy rhythm had broken. Something else was happening. "Why?" Jimmy asked. Tim looked at the envelope, then at Jimmy. "Because Robert doesn't have much time left." And he wanted to say something. To someone who might be watching. Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. Tim opened the envelope with shaking hands. He unfolded the letter, 2 pages, handwritten in careful, slightly shaky cursive. He looked at Jimmy one more time, as if asking permission. Jimmy nodded slowly. "Go ahead." Tim began to read. "My name is Robert Chen. I'm 78 years old and I'm dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors say I have maybe a month left. Maybe less. But that's not why I'm writing this letter." The studio was absolutely silent. 300 people holding their breath. The Roots had lowered their instruments. Even the camera operators seemed to be moving more carefully. Tim continued, his voice already starting to crack. 42 years ago, I did something I've never forgiven myself for. I had a daughter. Her name was Emily. She was 6 years old. Beautiful, smart, funny. She loved drawing. She loved singing. She loved her father. Tim paused, swallowing hard. Jimmy's smile was completely gone now, replaced by focused attention. My wife died when Emily was 4. Car accident. It was just the 2 of us after that. I was a mess. Drinking too much. Working too much. Barely holding it together. Emily deserved better than me. The letter trembled in Tim's hands. When she was 6, I made a decision. I told myself it was for her own good. I gave her up for adoption. My sister and her husband, they were stable, financially secure, ready for kids. They adopted Emily. And I walked away. I told myself she'd be better off. That she'd have a real family. A real father. Tim's voice broke completely. He stopped reading, his hand rising to cover his face. The letter lowered. Jimmy leaned forward. "Tim?" Tim couldn't speak. He just stood up from the guest chair, the letter still clutched in his hand, and walked toward the back of the stage. Away from the cameras. Away from the desk. His shoulders were shaking. The audience gasped. Jimmy sat frozen behind his desk, one hand raised mid-gesture from whatever he'd been about to say, his mouth open in shock. For 15 full seconds, an eternity in live television, he simply didn't know what to do. The control room was chaos. The director was screaming into headsets. "Do we cut to commercial? Do we stay on him? What's happening?" But Jimmy made a decision. He stood up from behind his desk, grabbed a bottle of water, and walked across the stage to where Tim had stopped, his back to the audience, trying to compose himself. "Hey," Jimmy said quietly, putting a hand on Tim's shoulder. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. To understand what happened next, you need to understand why Robert Chen sent that letter to Tim Allen in the first place. Robert had been watching The Tonight Show 3 weeks earlier. Another guest. Another interview. But something Jimmy had said during the monologue had stuck with him. A joke about fatherhood. About mistakes. About wishing you could go back. Robert had been thinking about Emily every day for 42 years. His sister and her husband had raised her well. They'd loved her. But Robert had stayed away, convinced he'd done the right thing, terrified that showing up again would only hurt her more. Now he was dying. And he'd realized that Emily probably didn't even know he existed. His sister had moved to California when Emily was 7. They'd changed her last name. Given her a fresh start. Robert had agreed to stay out of her life completely. But what if Emily had questions? What if she wondered about her biological father? What if she was out there searching, and he died without giving her a way to find answers? He couldn't afford a private investigator. He couldn't travel. He could barely leave his hospice room. But he could write a letter. And maybe, just maybe, if someone read it on television, Emily would see it. Or someone who knew Emily would see it. Or at the very least, he'd have said what he needed to say before he died. He'd tried local news stations. They'd all said no. Too personal. Not newsworthy. Not what they covered. Then he'd seen The Tonight Show. Seen Jimmy's warmth with guests. Seen how he handled emotional moments. And Robert had written to Tim Allen's management with a simple request. Would Tim Allen read this letter on The Tonight Show? As a favor to a dying man? Tim had called Robert personally. They talked for an hour. Tim had cried. He'd agreed immediately. "I'll read your letter," Tim had promised. "And Emily, if she's watching, she'll hear it." Now, on The Tonight Show stage, Tim Allen was trying to pull himself together. Jimmy stood beside him, water bottle extended. Tim took it, drank, wiped his eyes. "I'm sorry," Tim said. "I didn't think it would hit me like this." "Don't apologize," Jimmy said. "Do you want to finish reading it?" Tim looked at the letter in his hand. Then he looked at Jimmy, at the audience, at the cameras. "Yes. He asked me to finish it. I have to finish it." They walked back to the chairs together. Tim sat down. Jimmy sat across from him. The audience was completely silent, tears visible on dozens of faces. Tim lifted the letter again. "I walked away from Emily 42 years ago. I convinced myself it was the right choice. That she'd have a better life without me. But I was wrong. I was a coward. I was broken, and instead of fixing myself, I gave her away." Tim's voice was steadier now, though tears still streamed down his face. "Emily, if you're watching this, and I hope to God you are, I need you to know something. Not a single day has passed that I haven't thought about you. Not one. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I can't undo 42 years. But I need you to know that giving you up wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I loved you so much I thought you deserved better than me." The audience was openly crying now. The Roots band members had tears on their faces. Jimmy was wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Your mother's name was Susan. Susan Chen. She died in a car accident when you were 4. She loved you more than anything in this world. She used to sing you to sleep. You are my sunshine. Every night. You probably don't remember that. But I do." Tim paused, his throat working. "Emily, you were born on March 15, 1982, at Detroit General Hospital. You weighed 7 pounds 3 ounces. Your first word was Dada. You had a stuffed rabbit named Mr. Floppy that you carried everywhere. You loved mac and cheese and hated broccoli. You were afraid of thunderstorms, so I would stay with you until they passed. Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Tim reached the end of the letter. I'm dying now. And my greatest regret is that I never gave you the chance to know me, or to decide for yourself whether you wanted me in your life. If you're watching this, Emily, and if any of this sounds familiar, please know that I'm sorry. And that I love you. I always have. My sister's name is Margaret Chen Williams. She lives in Los Angeles. She knows how to find me. Please. I don't have much time. Tim folded the letter carefully. The studio was silent except for the sound of people crying. Jimmy didn't say anything for a long moment. He just sat there, processing. Then he turned to camera 1. If anyone watching knows Emily Chen, born March 15, 1982, adopted through Michigan Family Services around 1988, please reach out. We'll get you in contact with the show. With Robert's family. This man deserves to talk to his daughter before he dies. He turned back to Tim. Thank you for doing this. That took courage. Tim couldn't speak. He just nodded. But this is the moment no one in the studio, and no one watching at home, ever saw coming. The show went to commercial. But they didn't cut the cameras. The producers wanted to, but Jimmy waved them off. He stayed on stage with Tim, the two of them just sitting there while the audience gave a standing ovation that lasted through the entire commercial break. When they came back from commercial, Jimmy didn't continue with the usual interview. Instead, he addressed the camera directly. We're going to do something different tonight. I'm going to give out our show's contact information. And I'm asking anyone who knows Emily Chen, or who was adopted from Michigan around 1988, or who has any information that might help Robert find his daughter, please contact us. Tonight. Right now. The numbers appeared on screen. The show's social media handles. Email addresses. Within 20 minutes, the show's servers crashed from the volume of messages. Within 2 hours, they had a lead. Within 3 hours, they had found Emily Chen Williams. She was 42 years old, living in San Diego, working as a teacher. She'd known she was adopted. She'd been searching for her biological parents for 10 years with no success. She'd been watching The Tonight Show that night. She'd heard every word. The show's producers called her. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. That's my birthday. That's my biological mother's name. That's Mr. Floppy. Oh my God, that's my father. They conferenced Robert into the call. He was in his hospice bed in Michigan, barely conscious, his sister holding the phone to his ear. Emily? He whispered. Dad? She sobbed. I'm here. I'm here. Robert died 4 days later. But Emily made it to Michigan in time. She spent 3 days by his bedside, holding his hand, showing him pictures of her children, his grandchildren, telling him about her life. On his final day, Robert was barely conscious. But Emily sang to him. You are my sunshine. The song her mother used to sing. The song he remembered. He died holding her hand. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the funeral, Emily returned to The Tonight Show. She brought the letter. She thanked Jimmy and Tim personally. And she gave Jimmy something, a photo of her father holding her as a baby, smiling, before everything fell apart. He carried this guilt for 42 years, Emily said. But I got to tell him I forgave him. Because of you. Because of that letter. Jimmy keeps that photo in his dressing room. A reminder that sometimes television isn't just entertainment. Sometimes it's a bridge. Sometimes it saves what's left of someone's life. Tim Allen still has the letter. He says it changed how he sees his own relationship with his children. How he understands regret. How he knows that courage sometimes looks like reading someone else's words when they can't speak for themselves. The letter brought a daughter home. Just in time to say goodbye.